You must yourself realize the power of Athens, and feed your eyes upon her from day to day, till love of her fills your hearts. And then, when all her greatness shall break upon you, you must reflect that it was by courage, sense of duty, and a keen feeling of honor in action that men were enabled to win all of this, and that no personal failure in an enterprise could make them consent to deprive their country of their valor. But they laid it at her feet as the most glorious contribution they could offer. All right, that was a little excerpt from Pericles' funeral orientation, and if you don't understand what they laid at their feet, what they laid was their lives. This was a speech for a funeral by one of the. It's a great speech throughout of history, and it comes from one of the rulers in Athens, which is what we're talking about today. Um, and we'll talk about him actually a little later on when we get to the Peloponnesian War and everything. But today, let's focus on a little bit about Athens. Athens. We've already talked about Sparta. It was northeast, 2 days travel from Sparta. It was named after Athena. Whenever they built Athens, they held a contest among the gods, kind of per se, to try to find out what god was going to be their patron god. And it came down to two gods that had great interest, two major gods, Poseidon and Athena. Poseidon was the god of the sea, uh, and Athena was goddess of wisdom. And so they were like, okay, one of you need to be is going to be our patron god. Who can give us the best gift? Shall be our patron god. And so Poseidon created a spring, a well, if you may. And when they took, and they were, Athens was loved it. And then when they went to take water from it, it wound up being salt water because Poseidon is the god of the seas, and the seas are salt water. And so Athena gave them the olive tree, which becomes what a lot of Greece is known for is their olives. And so Athena wins out, and the city is named Athens after Athena, and Athena becomes the patron goddess of of Athens. Um, and this Athens is where the Olympics started, where the early Olympics began, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Greco-Persian Wars. As you can see here, here's Athens, and here's Sparta once again. So you can kind of see it was about 2 days journey to get from here over to here. Wasn't the easiest journey in the world, but it doable, and there's people who did go back and forth. Um, they weren't the friendliest of neighbors, so it's not like they were always hanging out. Uh, in Athens, it was a lot different than in uh, Sparta. The boys went to school, and at school they learned reading, writing, math, sports, uh, and music on what was called a lyre. Um, if you think about it, the Spartans might be like your jocks, while your Athens were your student body presidents. Uh, these were your more intellectuals. Okay. The girls, remember, Sparta girls trained and went to school and stuff. Well, the girls at Athens learned from home. Okay. They learned how to do spinning, weaving, that's like making clothes, and so forth, and other household chores. So they learned how to run a house. So the boys were taught all the basics, and then the girls were taught how to run a household. Remember, in Sparta, the women learned, were very physical, and they had a lot more rights than the ones there in Athens. Well, in 594 BC, Solon, which was a noble, came to power in Athens. And he canceled all of the farmers' debts because all the farmers were in debt to these people, to a lot of the rulers at the time, the king of this region, and um, he canceled all the farmers' debts, which was very popular among the farmers, and he freed all the farmers from indentured service, which means they were working, pretty much they were working slaves, a little more freedom than a slave, but uh, not as much freedom as a freed person. Um, he made all males a part of the assembly. Uh, Remember in Sparta, if you were 30 and up, you could be part of the assembly. Well, in Athens, if you were a male and of legal age, you were a part of the assembly. Uh, but there were a group of 400 of the wealthy citizens who actually wrote the laws. Okay. Now, in 508 BC, so if we look, 594, and then we go to 508, so we're almost 100 years later, Ctesianus becomes the ruler. Okay, he reorganizes the assembly, goes and he changes up how everything is done. He gave them actually more powers, so that the assembly made up of all the men uh, actually can do more. They can now debate matters openly, hear court cases, and actually appoint generals. So they actually have a little bit more say so in what's going on in the country. And then he replaces that 400 wealthy citizens with a new council of 500 citizens that are chosen each year by lottery. And they don't go buy lottery tickets to see if they do this. It's a random drawing um, of these out of the men uh, to see which 500 will sit on the council that year. If your name was drawn, then you sat on the council for that year. Next year came up, uh, and then it would be done again. This new council proposed laws, dealt with foreign countries, and ran the treasury. However, women and foreign-born were not allowed to participate. Um, so if you were a woman, I'm sorry, but in Athens you had very few rights. Uh, you would have been better to live in Sparta. Foreign born, just like Sparta. Sparta was not good, very big on foreigners. Athens actually welcomed foreigners. However, they did not let them participate in uh, Athenian government. All right. Well, until next time, deuces.